The celebration on Nexera Prime was the largest in 10,000 years. Ships from every corner of the galaxy filled the orbital stations. Fireworks of pure energy lit up the sky in colors that had no names in most languages. Music played from floating platforms, and billions of beings danced in the streets of the capital world. Ambassador Vela of the Tauran species stood on her private balcony and watched the celebration below. Her silver scales reflected the lights, and her four eyes blinked slowly as she took in the scene. Today was Liberation Day, the most sacred holiday in the Galactic Concord, the day they celebrated the salvation of civilization itself. 40,000 years ago, according to every history book and every monument in every child's lesson, the galaxy had faced its greatest threat. A species called humanity had risen from a small blue planet and spread like a disease. They were violent, they were cruel, they conquered everything they touched and showed no mercy to those who stood in their way. The founding races had no choice. The five great species who had built the Concord united their fleets and fought back against the human plague. The war lasted 200 years. Billions died. Worlds burned. But in the end, the founding races won. They destroyed Earth. They hunted down every human colony. They erased the threat forever, or so the history books said. Vela walked back inside her chambers and poured herself a drink. She had served the Concord for 300 years. She had visited the monuments built on the ashes of human worlds. She had read the ancient texts that described human cruelty in terrible detail. She believed every word. Why would she not believe? The evidence was everywhere. The founding races had saved the galaxy. That was simply the truth. A chime sounded at her door. Her assistant, a young Tauran named Kevin, rushed in without waiting for permission. His scales were pale with fear. "Ambassador," he said, his voice shaking, "you need to see this. Everyone needs to see this." Vela followed him to the communication center. Dozens of officials had already gathered, their faces showing confusion and terror. On the main screen, sensor data scrolled past too fast to read, but Vela understood enough. Ships, thousands of ships, emerging from deep space in perfect formation. "Where did they come from?" someone asked. "Unknown region," a technician answered. "Far beyond our maps. Far beyond anywhere we have ever explored." "What species? Whose ships are those?" The technician's hands trembled as he worked the controls. "The design matches nothing in our database, but they are broadcasting a signal, a message, in a language that has been dead for 40,000 years. The room went silent. "Show us," Vela said. The technician pressed a button. A voice filled the room. It spoke in a language that no living being should know. A language that existed only in ancient records and museum displays. A language that belonged to a species that had been completely destroyed. Human standard. The translation appeared on the screen a moment later. Simple words. Direct words. Words that made Vela's blood turn cold. "We remember what you did. We remember the truth. And we have returned." The celebration outside continued. The people did not know yet. They danced and sang and praised the founding races for saving them from monsters. They had no idea that those monsters had just appeared in their sky. Within the hour, every leader in the Concord had gathered in the high chamber. The five archons of the founding races sat on their ancient thrones. The High Archon, a massive creature called Vorath from the Zenith species, slammed his fist on the armrest. "This is impossible," he growled. "The purge was complete. We destroyed every ship, every colony, every single human being. Our ancestors made certain of it." "Clearly they failed," said another Archon, her voice bitter. "Perhaps it is a trick," suggested a third. "Another species using human signals to frighten us." Vorath shook his head. "Our analysts have confirmed. The ship designs match reconstructions of ancient human vessels, but more advanced. Far more advanced. 40,000 years more advanced." Vela stood among the ambassadors, listening to the argument. She had a question that no one seemed willing to ask. Finally, she spoke. "If some humans escaped the purge," she said, "where have they been for 40,000 years? And why have they returned now?" The room fell silent. Vorath's eyes found her in the crowd. "They have returned for revenge, obviously. That is what humans do. That is what they have always done. Violence and hatred. Nothing more. Then why send a message? Vela asked. Why not simply attack? No one had an answer. The human armada did not attack. For 3 days, the ships held their position at the edge of conquered space. 10,000 vessels, according to the latest count. The Concorde's combined military might was barely 3,000 ships. If battle came, the outcome was not in doubt. But battle did not come. The humans waited, silent, patient, as if they were giving the Concorde time to prepare, or time to think. On the fourth day, another message arrived. This one was longer. It was addressed to every world, every species, every citizen of the Concorde. It bypassed all security. It appeared on every screen, every device, every communication system in the galaxy. A human woman appeared. She had dark skin and short gray hair. Her eyes were brown and calm. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations. When she spoke, her voice was steady. My name is Captain Amara Chen. I command the vessel Remembrance and lead the Armada of Truth. I speak for the 12 billion humans who survived the genocide you call Liberation Day. Vela watched from her chambers, unable to look away. 40,000 years ago, Amara continued, your ancestors tried to kill us all. They nearly succeeded. A small fleet of refugees escaped through an unstable wormhole. We found ourselves in a distant galaxy, alone and broken. But we survived. We rebuilt. We grew. She paused. We also remembered. We kept records. We preserved the truth. And the truth is very different from the lies you have been told. Across the Concord, billions of beings watched in confusion. What lies? Everyone knew the history. Everyone knew humans were monsters. We did not start the war, Amara said. We discovered a secret. The founding races had built their civilization on slavery. Dozens of younger species were kept in chains, their labor and their lives stolen to build the glory of the five great powers. When humanity refused to participate, when we threatened to reveal the truth to the galaxy, the founding races decided we had to die. Vela felt her heart's pounding. This had to be lies, propaganda from the enemy, and yet the woman spoke so calmly, so simply, without anger or hatred. The war was not a war, Amara said. It was an extermination. We fought back as best we could, but we were outnumbered and outgunned. In the end, they burned Earth. They hunted our colonies. They killed billions of innocent people, men, women, children. They killed them all, and then they told the galaxy that we were the monsters. The message continued for several more minutes. Amara explained how the survivors had spent millennia in exile, how they had debated whether to return at all, how many had argued that the past should be left behind. But we could not leave behind the enslaved, she said. We could not forget the species still suffering under the founding races. We could not allow the lies to stand forever. So we came back, not for revenge, not for conquest, but for truth. She looked directly into the camera. We have the power to destroy the Concorde. We will not use it. We have the power to take your worlds. We will not take them. We want only three things. First, the release of all enslaved species. Second, a public acknowledgement of the true history. Third, accountability for those who ordered the genocide and continue to oppress others. Give us these things and there will be peace. Refuse, and the truth will still come out. It will just take longer. The message ended. Across the galaxy, the celebration had stopped. People stood in the streets looking up at the sky, wondering if everything they knew was a lie. In the high chamber, Vorath destroyed the screen with a single blow. His face twisted with rage. Lies, he snarled. All lies. We will not negotiate with animals. We will not bow to threats. High Archon, one of his advisors said carefully. Their fleet outnumbers ours. Their technology appears superior. Perhaps we should destroy them, Vorath roared, as our ancestors did, as we should have done completely the first time. He turned to his generals. Prepare the fleet. We attack in 12 hours. Vela watched the orders being given. She thought about the human woman's calm face, the steady voice, the lack of hatred. She thought about the history she had learned as a child, and for the first time in 300 years of service, Ambassador Vela began to wonder if she had been serving a lie. In orbit above Nexara Prime, The human armada waited. Captain Amara Chen stood on the bridge of the Remembrance and looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, beings were deciding whether to fight or to listen. "Captain," her first officer said, "the Concorde fleet is mobilizing. They appear to be preparing for battle." Amara nodded slowly. "Then we will show them who we really are. Not with weapons, not with destruction, but with something they have never seen from humans before." "What is that, Captain?" Amara turned to face her crew, men and women who were the descendants of survivors, people who had every reason to want revenge, people who had chosen after 40,000 years to be something better. "Mercy," she said. "We will show them mercy." The bridge was silent for a moment. "And if they do not understand?" her officer asked. Amara looked back at the stars. "Then we will show them again, and again, as many times as it takes. Our ancestors died because they refused to become monsters. We will not betray their memory now." Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the past and the future were about to collide, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Amara Chen walked through the corridors of the Remembrance and felt the weight of 40,000 years pressing down on her shoulders. The ship was old by human standards, but still powerful. Its hull had been rebuilt 17 times over the centuries. Its engines had been upgraded beyond anything the original designers could have imagined. But its name had never changed. The ship remembered, and so did everyone aboard. She reached the memorial hall and stopped at the entrance. The hall stretched for nearly a kilometer, its walls covered with names. Billions of names. Every human who had died in the purge, recorded and preserved for eternity. Amara came here every day. She found the names of her own ancestors on the far wall and stood before them in silence. Her first officer, Commander David Okonkwo, found her there an hour later. "The Concorde fleet has launched," he said. "They will reach our position in 8 hours." Amara nodded but did not turn around. "Have you ever wondered, David, if we made the right choice, coming back here?" David stood beside her and looked at the names. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth. Green forests, blue oceans. She never saw any of it. Neither did her mother or her grandmother. They all lived and died in exile, dreaming of a home they would never see. I think we owed it to them to return. Even if it means fighting." "We spent 40,000 years learning how not to fight," David said. "I think that is exactly why we had to come back. No one else could do what we are about to do." Amara finally turned away from the wall. "Show me the historical files again, the complete record of the purge. I want to review everything before we face them." They walked together to the archive chamber, the most protected room on the ship. Inside, holographic displays filled the air with images and documents and recordings. This was the truth that the Concorde had tried to destroy. The truth that humanity had carried across a galaxy and back. The story began 50,000 years ago, when humans first left Earth. They spread slowly at first, building colonies on nearby worlds. They encountered other species and made peaceful contact. They traded technology and culture and ideas. For 2,000 years, humanity grew and prospered. Then they met the founding races. The 5 great powers of the galaxy welcomed humanity at first. They offered trade agreements and diplomatic treaties. They invited human ambassadors to their capitals. They smiled and spoke of friendship. But behind the smiles, they watched carefully. They studied human technology. They analyzed human society. And they grew afraid. Humans were different from other species. They adapted quickly. They innovated constantly. They worked together in ways that other beings found almost frightening. A single generation of humans could accomplish what took other species centuries to achieve. The founding races saw the future clearly. If humans continued to grow, they would eventually surpass the 5 great powers. The balance of the galaxy would shift. The founding races would lose their dominance. So they began to plan. Amara watched the recordings of secret meetings held 30,000 years before the purge. Archons and generals and advisors discussed the human problem in calm, rational voices. They debated different solutions. Some suggested limiting human expansion through trade restrictions. Others proposed technological suppression. But one voice always returned to the same conclusion. They must be eliminated, completely, before they become too powerful to stop. The plan took centuries to develop. The founding races needed a reason to attack. They needed the rest of the galaxy to support the war. They needed humans to appear as monsters worthy of destruction. So they created evidence. They fabricated records of human atrocities. They staged attacks on their own colonies and blamed humanity. They spread propaganda through every world they controlled, painting humans as violent, cruel, and dangerous. And then they discovered that humans knew the truth about the enslaved species. Amara switched to a different set of recordings. These showed human explorers discovering a secret that the founding races had hidden for millennia. Dozens of younger species had been conquered and enslaved. They worked in mines and factories, their lives worth nothing. They were bought and sold like property. Their children were taken and trained to serve. It was an empire built on suffering. When human leaders confronted the founding races with this evidence, they sealed their own fate. The Archons could not allow this secret to spread. The rest of the galaxy believed the founding races were enlightened and just. If the truth came out, everything would collapse. The order was given: destroy humanity, destroy them completely, and destroy every piece of evidence they had gathered. The purge began without warning. Human colonies were bombed from orbit. Ships were hunted through space and destroyed. Earth itself was subjected to weapons so terrible that the planet would take 10,000 years to recover. Billions of humans died in a single year, but some survived. A fleet of refugee ships, carrying barely 1 million people, fled through an unstable wormhole at the edge of known space. They emerged in a galaxy 2 million light-years away, alone, broken, but alive. Amara had seen these recordings many times, but they never lost their power. She watched images of the refugee ships, damaged and crowded, drifting through unknown space. She saw the faces of the survivors, the fear, the grief, the determination. They had every reason to die, David said quietly. No resources, no support. 1 million people in hostile territory with nowhere to go. But they did not die, Amara said. They did not die. Instead, they built, slowly, painfully, over thousands of years. The survivors created a new civilization. They found habitable worlds and established colonies. They developed new technologies far beyond anything they had possessed before. They grew from 1 million desperate refugees to 12 billion thriving humans. But more important than their technological growth was their philosophical evolution. Amara switched to recordings from the early years of exile. The survivors had been angry. They had wanted revenge. Many argued that they should build weapons and return to destroy the founding races completely. "We should burn them as they burned us," one speaker declared in an ancient recording. "We should make them suffer as we have suffered." But other voices spoke against revenge. They argued that becoming destroyers would mean the founding races had won, that the survivors would become the very monsters they had been falsely accused of being. The debate lasted for centuries. Generation after generation discussed the question: what should humanity become? What values should guide them? If they had the power to destroy their enemies, should they use it? In the end, a consensus emerged. Humanity would not seek revenge. They would seek justice. They would return not as conquerors, but as liberators. They would prove through their actions that the lies of the founding races were lies. They would show the galaxy what humanity truly was. "The doctrine of truth," David said, watching the ancient recordings. "My family has studied it for generations." The doctrine was simple. Humanity would never strike first. They would never target civilians. They would never cause more harm than necessary. They would offer mercy to their enemies, even if mercy was not deserved. They would let their actions speak louder than any propaganda. It took 20,000 years to build the Armada, not because the technology was difficult, but because humanity wanted to be certain. Certain that they were ready. Certain that they would not lose themselves in the fight to come. Certain that they could face the beings who had murdered billions and still choose to be better. Amara closed the historical files and stood in the center of the archive chamber. The weight of 40,000 years pressed down on her, but she did not bend. "The Concorde fleet will arrive in 7 hours, David said. They have 3,000 ships. We have 10,000. Our technology is far superior. We could destroy them without effort." "Yes," Amara agreed, "we could. But we will not. No, We will not. She walked to the command console and began reviewing battle plans. Every scenario had been studied. Every possibility had been considered. The human armada knew exactly how to win this fight. They had known for centuries. When they attack, Amara said, we will disable their weapons and engines. We will not destroy their ships. We will not kill their crews. We will give them every chance to surrender. And when they refuse, we will give them another chance. And if they keep fighting, then we will keep showing them mercy until they understand, until the whole galaxy understands. David nodded. He had trained for this moment his entire life, as had his parents and grandparents before him. Every human in the Armada knew what was at stake. This was not a war. This was a demonstration. The founding races believe humans are monsters, Amara said. They have believed it for 40,000 years. They have taught it to every species in the conquered. They have built monuments to their lies and celebrated the genocide of our ancestors. She turned to face David, her eyes burning with something deeper than anger, something that had been forged over millennia. We will not prove them right. We will prove them wrong. And then we will free the species they have enslaved, and we will tear down the monuments built on our graves, and we will replace their lies with truth, not through destruction, through demonstration. The bridge crew was gathering for the pre-battle briefing. Thousands of men and women who carried the dreams of their ancestors. They had crossed 2 million light years to reach this moment. They had spent 40,000 years preparing for this day. Amara looked at them and felt pride beyond words. Today, she said, we begin to heal the galaxy, not with weapons, with truth, with mercy, with everything our ancestors died to protect. She took her place in the captain's chair. The Concord thinks they know what humans are capable of, she said. They are about to learn how wrong they have been, how wrong they have always been. The stars stretched before them, cold and bright. Somewhere ahead, 3,000 enemy ships were racing toward destruction. They just did not know it yet. The conquered fleet approached in perfect formation. Admiral Kessox of the Zenith species commanded from his flagship, the Divine Justice. He had fought in 17 wars over his long career. He had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. He had never lost a battle, but he had never faced humans before. No one alive had. Admiral, his tactical officer, reported, the human armada is holding position. They are not advancing. Cowards, Kessox growled. They send threats and make demands. But when real warriors approach, they freeze with fear. He studied the enemy formation on his display. 10,000 ships of unknown design. His intelligence officers had analyzed every scan and every image. The human vessels were larger than expected. Their power signatures were unusual, but numbers and size did not win battles. Training and courage won battles, and his fleet had both. Signal all ships, Kessox commanded. Full attack speed. We end this today. 3,000 warships accelerated toward the human armada. Weapons charged, shields activated. Pilots prepared for combat. On the Remembrance, Captain Amara Chen watched them come. Time to contact, she asked. 12 minutes, Commander Okonkwo replied. They are broadcasting on military frequencies. The Admiral is giving a speech about destroying the human threat once and for all. Amara almost smiled. He believes the propaganda. They all do, Captain. They have believed it for 40,000 years. The bridge was calm. No one shouted orders or rushed to stations. Every crew member knew their role. Every system had been checked 1,000 times. The human armada had prepared for this moment longer than the Concorde had existed. Open a channel to the Concorde fleet, Amara said. All frequencies. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Captain. Amara stood and faced the main screen. Somewhere out there, Admiral Kessox and his 3,000 ships were racing toward battle. She spoke clearly and without anger. Admiral Kessox, this is Captain Amara Chen of the human vessel Remembrance. You are approaching our defensive perimeter with weapons charged. I urge you to stop and reconsider. On the Divine Justice, Kessox laughed. The animal wishes to negotiate. Ignore her. Amara continued speaking. We do not wish to fight you. We came here for justice, not war. But if you attack us, we will defend ourselves, and you will lose. Lies, Kessox said to his bridge crew. Human tricks. They are trying to frighten us because they know they cannot win. Continue the attack. Admiral, his tactical officer said hesitantly, our long-range scans show unusual energy readings from the human ships. Their power output is far beyond anything in our database. Superior power means nothing without the will to use it. Humans are cowards. Our ancestors proved that 40,000 years ago. They ran from battle then, and they will run now. Amara's voice continued over the channel. Admiral, I am going to tell you something that your history books do not contain. When your ancestors attacked humanity, we did not run. We fought. We fought for 200 years against overwhelming odds. We only retreated when there was no other choice, when billions of our people were already dead. Kessox waved his hand dismissively. Propaganda. The humans who escaped did not flee because they were coward, Amara said. They fled because they wanted their children to live. They wanted humanity to survive. And we did survive. We spent 40,000 years becoming stronger. Stronger in technology, stronger in wisdom, stronger in every way that matters. The fleets were now 6 minutes apart. You believe you are about to destroy monsters, Amara said. You believe you are continuing the noble work of your ancestors. But your ancestors were not noble. They were murderers who killed billions of innocent people to protect their power. And the lies they told have poisoned your civilization ever since. Kessox slammed his fist on his command chair. Enough. Cut communications. All ships, prepare to fire on my command. The channel went silent. The Concorde fleet continued its approach. On the Remembrance, Amara sat back down in her chair. They are not going to stop, David observed. No, they are not. Orders. Captain? Amara looked at the tactical display. 3,000 ships. Hundreds of thousands of crew members. Sons and daughters and parents and friends. Beings who had been raised on lies and were about to attack an enemy they did not understand. Execute Defense Pattern 7, she said. Disable only. No kills. The order spread through the human armada instantly. 10,000 ships adjusted their positions. Weapon systems activated. But the weapons were not set to destroy. The Concorde fleet entered firing range. Admiral Kessox shouted the command. All ships, fire! 3,000 vessels unleashed their weapons. Energy beams and missiles and plasma bursts filled the space between the fleets. It was the largest attack in Concorde history, enough firepower to crack planets. The human armada did not move. The weapons struck the human shields and disappeared, not deflected, not absorbed, simply gone, as if they had never existed. On the Divine Justice, the tactical officer stared at his screen in disbelief. No damage. No damage to any human ship. Our weapons had no effect at all. Kessox's face went pale. Impossible. Fire again. The conquered fleet fired again and again. Thousands of weapons struck the human shields without leaving a scratch. How? Kessox whispered. On the Remembrance, Amara watched the futile attack with something like sadness. They do not understand yet, but they will. She gave a simple nod. The human armada responded, not with weapons of destruction, but with something far more precise. Pulses of energy swept through the Concorde fleet. They passed through shields as if they did not exist. They touched each ship for less than a second, and then it was over. On the Divine Justice, every light went dark. Emergency power flickered on, showing red warning indicators across every system. Engines offline, weapons offline, shields offline, communications limited to short range. The ship was not damaged. No hull breaches, no casualties. But it could not fight. It could barely move. Across the Concorde fleet, 3,000 ships experienced the same fate simultaneously. In less than 4 minutes, the greatest military force in the galaxy had been completely neutralized without a single death. Admiral Kessox stood frozen on his bridge, unable to comprehend what had happened. His crew looked at him with fear in their eyes. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Captain Amara Chen appeared on the emergency display. Her face was calm. Her voice was gentle. Admiral Kessox, your fleet has been disabled. Your weapons, engines, and shields are offline. Your life support systems are functioning normally. No one aboard your ships has been harmed. Kessox could not speak. We could have destroyed you, Amara continued. Every ship, every crew member. We had the power, but we chose not to use it. Do you understand what I am telling you? The Admiral found his voice. It was hoarse and weak. You are playing games with us. No, Admiral. We are showing you the truth. We are not the monsters your ancestors created. We never were. Monsters do not show mercy. Monsters do not disable weapons when they could destroy ships. Monsters do not spare the lives of those who are trying to kill them. She leaned forward slightly. Your history says that humans are violent and cruel. Your monuments say that the purge was necessary to save the galaxy. But look at what just happened. We defeated your entire fleet in 4 minutes without taking a single life. Does that sound like the actions of monsters? Across the Concord, the broadcast was being received on every world. Citizens watched in shock as Admiral Kessox and his mighty fleet sat helpless in space, disabled but unharmed. They listened to the human captain speak words that contradicted everything they had ever been taught. We will repair your ship, Amara said. We will restore your engines so you can return home. We will not pursue you or attack your worlds. All we ask is that you think about what you have seen today. Think about what it means. On the divine justice, Kessox's hands were shaking. His tactical officer had pulled up records of the battle. 4 minutes, no human casualties, no Concord casualties. It was impossible. It was against everything he knew about war. Why? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why would you spare us? Amara's expression softened. Because killing you would not bring back our ancestors. Because proving we are better than the lies told about us matters more than revenge. Because 40,000 years ago, we made a choice. We chose to become the species we always wanted to be, not the species your ancestors tried to make us into. She paused. We want peace, Admiral. We want justice for the enslaved species. We want the truth to be known. We do not want to destroy the Concord or kill its people. We want something much harder than destruction. We want change. The transmission ended. For a long time, Admiral Kessox sat in silence. Around him, his crew worked to restore basic systems using manual overrides. The human armada remained in position, making no aggressive moves. Finally, the Admiral spoke. Get me a channel to the High Archon. Priority 1. Admiral, our long-range communications are disabled. Then send a shuttle. Send a message drone. I do not care how, but the High Archon needs to know what happened here. He needs to know what we are dealing with. His tactical officer approached hesitantly. Admiral, what do we tell him? Kessox looked out at the human ships, floating silently in the darkness. Ships that could have killed everyone in his fleet but chose not to. Tell him, the Admiral said slowly, that everything we thought we knew about humans was wrong, and tell him that if we fight them again, we will not just lose the battle, we will lose everything. The message was sent. The galaxy waited, and somewhere on Nexara Prime, High Archon Vorath received news that would shake the foundations of his power. The humans had won the battle without killing anyone, and that terrified him more than any weapon ever could. High Archon Vorath read Admiral Kessox's report 17 times. Each reading made him angrier than the last. 3,000 ships disabled in 4 minutes. 0 casualties on either side. The humans had made his fleet look like children playing with toys. But what disturbed him most was not the defeat. It was what came after. Reports were flooding in from across the Concord. Citizens were asking questions. They had seen the battle footage. They had heard the human captain's words. They were beginning to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the history they knew was not entirely accurate. Doubt was spreading like a disease, and doubt was far more dangerous than any armada. Vorath summoned his most trusted advisors to a secret chamber deep beneath the capital. No recordings, no witnesses. Just the inner circle who had ruled the Concord for centuries. We cannot defeat them militarily, one advisor said. Their technology is beyond anything we possess. Our analysts say they are at least 10,000 years ahead of us. Then we do not fight them with ships, Vorath replied. We fight them with something they cannot defend against. We use their own weakness. What weakness? They seem to have none. Vorath smiled coldly. Their weakness is their mercy. They refuse to kill. They refuse to cause harm. They think this makes them strong, but it makes them predictable. And predictable enemies can be destroyed. He activated a hidden display. Ancient schematics appeared, showing a weapon system that had been buried for 40,000 years. During the original purge, our ancestors built fail-safe weapons, devices designed to ensure that no human could ever truly escape. These weapons were hidden throughout the galaxy, waiting to be activated if humans ever returned. His advisors leaned forward with interest. The nearest human colony ships are 3 light years from here, Vorath continued. Civilian vessels carrying millions of humans, including families. Children. These weapons can reach those ships in hours. If I activate them, every human civilian in range will die. But the humans will retaliate, an advisor protested. They will destroy us. No, they will not. Vorath's eyes gleamed with cruel certainty. They showed us who they are when they spared our fleet. They are weak. They will not sacrifice innocent lives. When I threaten their civilians, they will back down. They will withdraw. And once they are gone, we will hunt them across the galaxy and finish what our ancestors started. And if they do not back down, then they prove our history was correct all along. Either way, we win. The weapons were activated, ancient systems hummed to life for the first time in 40,000 years, and a message was sent to the human armada. On the remembrance, Captain Amara Chen received the ultimatum with a heavy heart. The High Archon appeared on her screen, his massive form filling the display. Human, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. You think you have won because you disabled our fleet. You think your mercy makes you superior, but you have only shown me your weakness. He transmitted coordinates. Amara saw them and felt her blood turn cold. Your colony ships are in range of weapons you cannot stop, Vorath continued. Weapons hidden since the original purge. If you do not withdraw your armada immediately, I will destroy those ships. Millions of your people will die. Men, women, and children. Their blood will be on your hands. The bridge crew stared at the display in horror. Commander Okonkwo stepped forward. Captain, we have to. I know what he wants, Amara said quietly. He wants us to attack, to become the monsters he claims we are. That is the only way he can justify his lies. She looked at the coordinates again. Colony ships carrying families. People who had crossed 2 million light years to help liberate the enslaved. People who trusted the Armada to protect them. And if we withdraw, she asked. Vorath laughed. Then you admit defeat. You abandon the enslaved species. You prove that humanity is cowardly as well as dangerous. Either way, my version of history remains intact. Amara thought for a long moment. Her officers watched her, waiting for orders. The entire Armada waited. Millions of humans trusted her to make the right choice. Finally, she spoke. I will come to you, she said, alone, as a prisoner. You can put me on trial as a war criminal. You can execute me if you wish. In exchange, you will spare the civilian ships. Vorath's eyes widened with surprise. He had not expected this. You would surrender yourself? For what purpose? I want the trial broadcast to every world in the Concord, Amara said. Live transmission, no editing, no censorship. If you are going to execute me, let the galaxy see it happen. The High Archon considered this. A public trial of a human leader, a chance to demonstrate Concord justice to the entire galaxy, a chance to prove that humans were still the monsters they had always been. Very well, he said. You will stand trial for crimes against the Concord, and when you are found guilty, you will be executed in front of every being in the galaxy. The transmission ended. On the bridge, Commander Okonkwo grabbed Amara's arm. Captain, you cannot do this. He will kill you. Perhaps, Amara said, but he will do it in front of billions of witnesses. And before he kills me, I will speak. She pulled a small data chip from her uniform. It contained 40,000 years of preserved history, every record, every document, every piece of evidence that proved the founding races had lied. The trial will be my platform, she said. The galaxy will hear the truth, even if I have to die to share it. There must be another way. Amara smiled sadly. There is not. We could destroy the weapons targeting our civilians, but doing so would require us to kill thousands of Concord soldiers. That is not who we are. We cannot become monsters to save ourselves from being called monsters. She handed command of the Armada to David Okonkwo. Keep our people safe. No matter what happens to me, do not attack. Do not give them what they want. 1 hour later, a single shuttle departed from the Remembrance. Amara piloted it herself toward Nexera Prime, toward the High Archon, toward a trial that could change the galaxy forever. The trial began 3 days later in the Grand Hall of Justice. It was the largest chamber on Nexera Prime, built to hold 10,000 spectators. Every seat was filled. Hundreds of cameras broadcast the proceedings to every world in the Concord. Amara stood alone in the center of the chamber, her hands bound. She wore her simple captain's uniform. She showed no fear. High Archon Vorath presided from a raised platform. Around him sat the other 4 Archons of the founding races. They looked down at the human with expressions of hatred and disgust. "You are charged with crimes against civilization," Vorath announced. "Your species murdered billions of innocent beings. You started a war that nearly destroyed the galaxy. And now you have returned to threaten us again." Amara said nothing. "How do you plead?" "I request the right to speak in my own defense," Amara said, "as your own laws require." Vorath nodded impatiently. "You may speak. It will not save you." Amara looked directly at the cameras. She knew billions were watching, beings who had been raised to believe humans were monsters, beings who had never questioned the history they were taught. "I do not deny the charges," she said. "I confirm them. Humanity did fight a war against the founding races 40,000 years ago. Billions did die, but the history you have been told is a lie." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Vorath raised his hand for silence. "We have heard your lies before, human." "These are not lies." Amara held up the data chip. "This contains 40,000 years of preserved records, documents from before the war, communications between the founding races, orders given by your ancestors, the complete truth about what really happened." She began to present the evidence. Document after document appeared on the chamber's displays. Secret communications between the Archons of 40,000 years ago, discussing how to eliminate humanity, plans to fabricate evidence of human atrocities, orders to destroy human colonies without warning. The spectators watched in growing shock. They saw messages that described humans not as monsters, but as a threat to be eliminated before they grew too powerful. They saw records of the enslaved species, hidden from the galaxy for millennia. They saw the truth. "Humanity did not start the war," Amara said. "We discovered that the founding races had enslaved dozens of younger species. When we threatened to reveal this truth, your ancestors decided we had to die." She showed images of human colonies before the purge. Peaceful cities, schools, hospitals, children playing in parks, and then images of those same places after the attacks. Burning ruins, mass graves, devastation beyond words. 40 billion humans died in the purge, Amara said. Not soldiers, not warriors, families, children, innocent people who had never harmed anyone. The chamber was silent. Even the Archons seemed shocked by the evidence, or most of them did. Vorath's face had turned dark with rage. "Enough!" he shouted. "These documents are forgeries, human tricks designed to deceive us." "They can be verified," Amara said calmly. "Your own scientists can confirm their authenticity. The truth cannot be hidden forever, High Archon. Not anymore." Across the Concord, citizens watched in stunned silence. Many had tears in their eyes. They had celebrated Liberation Day their entire lives. They had praised their ancestors for saving the galaxy from human monsters, and now they were learning that the monsters were someone else entirely. The enslaved species watched too, beings who had suffered in silence for millennia. They saw humans speaking for them, fighting for them, risking everything for their freedom. Vorath stood from his throne. "This trial is over. The human is guilty. The sentence is death. You cannot silence the truth by killing me," Amara said. "The galaxy has already seen the evidence. Billions of beings now know what really happened. You can execute me, but you cannot untell the truth." Vorath drew a weapon and pointed it at Amara. His guards moved forward to carry out the execution, But they stopped. The captain of the guard, a young officer named Byron, stepped between Vorath and Amara. His weapon was holstered. His hands were empty. "I cannot allow this," Byron said. "You dare defy me?" Vorath roared. "I have seen the evidence, High Archon. I believe it is authentic. And I will not execute an innocent person to protect a lie." Other guards stepped forward. Not all of them, but enough. They formed a protective circle around Amara. Across the Concord, similar scenes were unfolding. Citizens were gathering in the streets. Military officers were questioning their orders. The truth was spreading faster than anyone could contain it. Vorath looked around the chamber with wild eyes. His power was crumbling. His lies were exposed. Everything his ancestors had built was falling apart. "You will all pay for this," he snarled. "Every one of you." But no one was listening to him anymore. They were watching Amara. They were thinking about what they had learned. They were beginning to understand that the galaxy they thought they knew had never really existed. The truth had finally been told. And nothing would ever be the same. The collapse happened faster than anyone expected. Within days of the trial, governments across the Concord were falling. Citizens demanded answers. Military officers refused orders from leaders they no longer trusted. The enslaved species, who had watched the broadcast in hidden corners of their prison worlds, began to rise. But there was no violence. Not from the slaves. Not from the humans. The revolution was made of questions, not weapons. Billions of beings simply stopped obeying the lies they had been told. On Nexara Prime, High Archon Vorath barricaded himself in his palace with a handful of loyal guards. He screamed orders into communication systems that no one was monitoring. He threatened punishments that no one feared anymore. His power had been built on a lie, and when the lie died, so did his authority. The other Archons surrendered peacefully. Some claimed ignorance, saying they had not known the true history. Some admitted their crimes and asked for mercy. Some simply vanished, fleeing to unknown corners of the galaxy. Captain Amara Chen stood at the center of the storm, guiding events with a steady hand. She sent the same message to every world. "We are not here to conquer. We are not here for revenge. We are here to help." And then she proved it. Human ships descended on enslaved worlds. But they carried no weapons. They carried doctors, engineers, teachers, food and medicine, and building materials. After 40,000 years in exile, humanity returned to the galaxy as healers. Commander David Okonkwo led the first humanitarian mission to Kethros, a mining world where the Zathani species had been enslaved for 3,000 years. The Zathani were small beings with gray skin and large dark eyes. They had never known freedom. They had been born in chains and expected to die in chains. When David's shuttle landed, the Zathani gathered at a distance, watching with fear. They had been told that humans were monsters, that humans ate other species alive, that humans enjoyed causing pain. David stepped off the shuttle alone. He carried no weapon. He walked slowly toward the crowd and stopped a few meters away. "My name is David," he said through a translator. "I am human. We have come to help you." An elderly Zathani stepped forward. His body was bent from years of hard labor. His eyes were filled with suspicion. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you help us?" "We did nothing to save your ancestors. We watched them die." David knelt down to meet the old one's eyes. "You did not watch them die. You were enslaved. You had no power to help anyone. The people who killed our ancestors are the same people who enslaved you. That makes us allies, not enemies." "But we believed the lies. We celebrated Liberation Day. You believed what you were told," David said gently. "We do not blame you for that. Blame the ones who told the lies, not the ones who were deceived." The old Zathani stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and touched David's hand. "You are warm," he said with wonder. "The stories said humans were cold-blooded killers, but you are warm." David smiled. "We are just people, like you. We have made mistakes. We have learned from them. And we want to help build something better." That scene repeated itself on 100 worlds. Humans arrived with supplies and support. They built hospitals and schools. They repaired infrastructure that had been neglected for centuries. They treated former enemies with the same kindness they showed to former slaves. Not everyone welcomed them at first. Many citizens of the Concord still feared humans. They had been raised on horror stories and propaganda. It took time for them to accept that the monsters they had been taught to hate were the ones bringing them medicine and food. But time worked in humanity's favor. Day after day, month after month, humans proved who they were through their actions. They asked for nothing in return. They made no demands. They simply helped. Ambassador Vela of the Torn species became one of the first to publicly support the new order. She had been skeptical at first. She had spent 300 years serving the Concord, but she had also watched the trial. She had seen the evidence, and she could not ignore the truth. "I was wrong," she said in a broadcast to her homeworld. "I believed the lies because they were all I knew. But I have seen humans with my own eyes now. I have watched them heal the sick and feed the hungry. I have watched them show mercy to those who would have killed them. Whatever our ancestors said about humanity, they were wrong." 1 year after the trial, High Archon Vorath was captured by his own former guards. He was brought before a council of representatives from every species in the galaxy. Humans, conquered citizens, former slaves. Everyone who had a stake in the future. Amara Chen was asked to recommend his punishment. She stood before the council, looking at the broken figure of Vorath. He had aged decades in a single year. His eyes were empty. His power was gone. "He ordered the genocide of my ancestors," Amara said. "He threatened to murder millions of innocent civilians. He defended lies that caused suffering beyond measure." The council waited for her verdict. "I recommend that he live," Amara said. Gas filled the chamber. "I recommend that he spend the rest of his days witnessing the civilization we build together. Let him see species working together in peace. Let him see former slaves becoming leaders and scholars. Let him see humans helping those who once tried to destroy us. That will be his punishment. Not death. Life. A long life in a galaxy that proves everything he believed was wrong." The council voted unanimously to accept her recommendation. 5 years later, a ceremony was held on Earth. The planet had been restored over millennia, transformed from a scarred wasteland into a paradise of green forests and blue oceans. Humans had never stopped dreaming of their homeworld. Now finally, they could walk on its surface again. The ceremony took place at the site of an ancient city. No one remembered its original name, but they remembered what had happened there 50,000 years ago. Millions of humans had died on this ground when the purge came. Now millions stood on that same ground to remember them. A monument had been built at the heart of the gathering. It stretched toward the sky, covered with names. 40 billion names. Every human who had died in the genocide, recorded and honored for eternity. Captain Amara Chen stood before the monument and addressed the crowd. Representatives from every species in the galaxy had come to witness this moment. Former enemies stood beside former slaves. The conquered was gone, replaced by a new alliance built on truth and cooperation. 50,000 years ago, Amara said, humanity was nearly destroyed. Our ancestors were murdered by those who feared what we might become. Our worlds were burned. Our history was erased. We were called monsters, and the galaxy celebrated our death. She paused. But we survived. We escaped to a distant galaxy and spent 40,000 years learning to be better. We learned that strength without wisdom is just violence. We learned that power without mercy is just cruelty. We learned that the greatest victory is not destroying your enemies, but transforming them into friends. She gestured to the crowd around her. Look at what we have built together. Species that once enslaved each other now work side by side. Beings who were raised to fear humans now call us allies. The lies that divided us for millennia have been replaced by truth. And we have done this not through conquest, but through compassion. A young child approached the monument. She was Zathani, one of the formerly enslaved. In her hands, she carried a small flower grown on her homeworld. "I am sorry," she said to the monument, "for what happened to you. I am sorry we believed the lies. But we will remember you now. We will always remember." She placed the flower at the base of the monument. And then, one by one, beings from every species in the galaxy came forward to do the same. Flowers and tokens and symbols of respect, an offering of remembrance from a galaxy that had finally learned the truth. Amara watched with tears in her eyes. "Our ancestors died for something," she said quietly. They died because they refused to become what others accused them of being. They died because they chose truth over silence. They died because they believed that some things matter more than survival. She looked up at the monument, at the endless names of the dead. We have honored their sacrifice. We have built the galaxy they dreamed of, and we have proven once and for all that humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons or our technology. It was our ability to choose mercy over vengeance, to choose truth over lies, to choose love over hate. The ceremony ended as the sun set over Earth, a beautiful sunset of orange and purple, painted across a sky that humans had not seen for 50,000 years. That night, beings from 100 worlds sat together and shared stories. They talked about the past and dreamed about the future. They laughed and cried and discovered that they had more in common than they had ever imagined. And somewhere in the crowd, Ambassador Vela found herself sitting next to Captain Amara Chen. They watched the stars appear above the restored Earth. "Do you think we can really change?" Vela asked. "After everything that has happened, all the suffering, all the lies?" Amara considered the question. "Change is hard," she admitted. "It takes time. It takes patience. It takes a willingness to keep trying even when progress seems impossible." "How do you know it will work?" Amara smiled. "I do not know. No one can know the future. But I know what my ancestors believed. They believed that every species has the capacity for good. They believed that understanding can replace fear. They believed that the galaxy could be better than it was." She gestured at the crowd around them. "And I believe they were right. Look at us, sitting here together, speaking to each other. That would have been impossible a few years ago. But here we are. That is proof that change is possible." Vela nodded slowly. "It is strange. I spent 300 years believing I understood the galaxy. Now I realize I understood nothing." "That is not weakness," Amara said. "That is wisdom. The first step to learning is admitting that you do not know." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. "What happens now?" Vela finally asked. Amara looked at the stars that her ancestors had dreamed of reaching, stars that humanity had finally returned to claim, not through force, but through patience and mercy. "Now," she said, "we build. Together. All of us. We create the galaxy that should have existed all along, a galaxy where truth matters more than power, where compassion matters more than conquest, where every species has the chance to reach their full potential." She smiled. "Our ancestors were almost destroyed by hatred. We answered hatred with hope. And hope, it turns out, is stronger than any weapon ever built." Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy reborn. A galaxy that had believed humanity was a plague. They learned in the end that humanity was the cure.